All right, in this video, we're going to look at trends in labor force participation by women at different age groups. And so if you notice on the bottom, it's divided into different age groups. So like here's 16 to 17, sorry. And then it goes 18 to 19, 20 to 24, and so on, up to the top group is 65 plus. Okay, so that includes, might include people up to 80, 90, even 100 years old. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So first, I'm going to look at the trend from 1940. So I'll start, for each of these, I'm just going to highlight the line. So this is 1940. That's the line for 1940. And the trend in 1940 was early exit. Okay, so there's kind of this peak in the early 20s. Women hit their peak of their labor force participation, and still less than half were in the labor force. And then from that point on, they start dropping out. And then over time, as they for older women, the rates are just less and less and less. Okay, so that's the sort of the trend in 1940. You can describe it as early exit. And what's really going on here in most cases is that although younger women were working to some extent, people were pretty much not working after having children. So women with children working was very rare. And so there was kind of this point early on where people had worked, and then after that they dropped out of the labor force. Okay, so we can call that the early exit period. The next one is 1960, so we can highlight it here. And 1960 is, as it looks in the picture, it's M-shaped. Okay, and it's called M-shaped because it looks like an M. And so what does this M tell us? Well, we have a couple things going on here. So first, we'll just focus on the left-hand side. So left-hand side, we do get a little bit higher labor force participation for younger women. So younger women were a little more involved in the labor force than they were as of 1940. So this is high school and immediately after high school. Actually, incidentally, the 25 to 34 and the 20 to 24 group are basically exactly the same, almost exactly the same as 1940. Okay, so it's still following this downward trend where women are dropping out of the labor force as they get married and have children. Okay? But here's where the big difference lies. From the late 30s into the 40s and 50s, labor force participation recovers and climbs back to its former peak. Okay, so there's this thing of M-shaped is usually used to describe when we have this re-entry phenomenon, where people leave the labor force participation when they have children, but then they re-enter at a later point. Okay, so let's go to 1980. Okay, so 1980 is the darker of these two dashed lines. So I'll highlight it here. So by 1980, the labor force participation for women has increased a lot, and it's pretty much increased at every age except for the 65 plus. Okay, but it's increased at all the rest, and it's increased the biggest amount in the middle. So this M shape starts to disappear. There's still a slight little dip, but it basically starts to disappear. And so this is where the big gains happen. So from 1940 to 1960, there's some gain. It's mainly in this idea that women are starting to they leave the labor force and they have children, but they come back eventually, which is kind of a new thing. But then the move from 1960 to 1980 is this, it changes shape. So it's no longer very M-shaped. There's not this big exit once people get married and have children. And so people are staying in for a long period of time. And this is what we call labor force attachment. So people are more attached, they have more experience, and then they're going to start being able to move into higher level positions. So now the next one we go ahead is into 2000. So 2000, we get this big one. Okay. So we're going to get this big one for 2000. 2000, the big deal here is that it's not much change in the early age, so for high school and right after high school, but there's this big change in the prime working years. So from 25 to late 50s, the labor force participation is high and relatively constant and doesn't have a big dip anywhere. So this is a really, really big difference from before. So still from 80 to 2000, there's still a big increase, and 2000 is basically the peak. So what's happened since that time? That's the last thing we're going to show. Okay, so this was 2000, is that color. And then finally, we'll go with red for 2015. So 2015, we start to get some phenomenon that's not very positive for the labor force. And so the big one is there's a big decrease amongst younger women, and there's a small decrease in the peak working age. Okay, and so we'll look at these trends a little bit later. But this one partly is taking people longer before they get their first job, and then also there's this phenomenon in the middle where there's a small decrease in working for women in this kind of peak working age. And to some extent, some of the phenomenon here seems to be similar to what's happening for men, actually. So we'll come back to those a little bit later.